Times are not good. Times are not good at all in College Station, Texas right now. And there are a lot of bad things happening. If you're a casual fan, you just watch the games on Saturday, you know they're 3-4. So certainly at the crux of all of this is they're not winning enough games, but as is usually the case, if you're getting bad fruit, there's a reason. And right now, it feels like a ton of things are all going wrong simultaneously. Now, before we delve into the negative, I do want to give immense credit to the students at Texas A&M. For those of you who were not locked onto your Doppler radars last night at around 10 or 11 Central Time, there was what is called a quasi-linear convective system, or a QLCS, that came right through Central and Eastern Texas. Flights had to get rerouted in Houston and Dallas, and in the midst of all that is College Station, Texas. And even though they're 3-4, the students at Texas A&M and the crowd, I mean the fan base in general, they haven't given up. Like, they're still selling that place out. They got a home game for the first time in over a month this weekend. Maybe you heard about that, against Ole Miss. So they were camped out to get tickets. And then the storm came through. And we're showing you footage right now. If you're listening on podcast, just essentially picture a hurricane, but on land, and picture a bunch of tents. Probably, in fact, I would almost assure you those tents came from Academy Sports and Outdoors, given the fact that they withstood 60 or 70 mile an hour winds, sideways rain, you had lightning, which is my biggest fear. But that's Pate State material. Independent of what your team's doing on the field, the fact that you guys support them like that means, number one, you are clearly the caliber of person that we want in our midst. And number two, man, you deserve so much better on Saturdays. I know they're a different team at home than they have been on the road, but I want so much better for you guys. Okay, so here's how things stand. And there's a lot that's happened over the past 24 hours that probably a lot of you are unaware of. So this is where it goes downhill pretty quickly. A&M's 3-4. Last home game they had was against Miami. That feels like forever ago. Do you remember, what would it have been? Last February, I guess. We did a segment on this show last February after Texas A&M had brought in that top-ranked recruiting class of all time. And I just reminded you, in the midst of all the celebration, there are consequences to success. And in recruiting, there are consequences to recruiting success. You don't just go and bring a bunch of highly rated kids in and then seamlessly plug them into the little compartments on your team and they go about their business like robots. That's not the way it works. It never has worked that way. And certainly in this day and age, it's not going to work that way. So last night, Billy Lucci over at TexAgs starts to make official what there had been rumblings about. And that is Jimbo Fisher suspending multiple members of that true freshman team. I don't even think it's important enough to get into names here. You can see them on your screen if you want to. If you're listening on podcast, just understand a lot of highly rated players, not a lot, some highly rated players from that 2022 signing class got suspended. If you're so interested in why, the rumors are out there. Don't really feel like trafficking in those tonight either. They did things they weren't supposed to. And it's not the first time this year. So you got that going on. You got 3 of their starting offensive linemen done for the year. You got a couple of big-time defensive starters up front defensively that haven't been playing because of that. Connor Wegman is the only healthy quarterback they have available right now, or at least that's the way it sounds. So like Billy said last night, and like was literally happening outside your window if you live there, when it rains, it pours. That's what it feels like. And that's what's happening around Texas A&M right now. Not good energy, some toxic energy outside the program, and for all we know, maybe inside the program. Now, things sometimes aren't always as they appear, but then again, sometimes things are even worse than they appear. So I don't know exactly what situation we have now. It's not good, though. There is and I want to be very clear with what I'm saying here, so I'm not misunderstood. I'll repeat it 5 times if I need to. If I were running a program, I would want all the elite talent I could get. I am certainly not going to sit here and say, oh, they should have backed off. They should have only taken 6 5-star players, not 9 or 10. No, I want as many of them as I can get. But here's the thing. When you're acquiring talent in college football, your main goal should be acquiring talent that fits what you want to do. You don't just go out there like an episode of Supermarket Sweep and run down the aisle and knock as much stuff into your grocery cart, independent of what it is, as you can with the time allotted to you on the clock. Again, that's not the way recruiting should work. It kind of felt to a degree that that's what A&M's class consisted of this past cycle. Whether I'm right on that or not is another matter. But they went out and they literally got everyone they could. Again, I'm not here to hate on that. That is their approach. There are many different approaches out there to recruiting. Mike Gundy hardly ever finishes inside the top 30. They win 10 games a year. Nick Saban always finishes inside the top 3, and they win a lot. They play for championships every other year. The problem A&M fans have is Jimbo Fisher comfortably fits somewhere in between there, closer to Saban than Gundy in terms of results, but they don't finish anywhere close to either one of them when it comes to the end of the year. So it's like pick a lane, but we need the results. Okay, that's really what A&M fans are worried about at the end of the day. But anyway, when I'm talking about acquiring talent, and you're talking about all these problems inside the locker room right now, you got guys getting suspended, you got rumors of guys just no-show in practice, maybe heading into the transfer portal, which I expect and is not a shock. There is a great catch-22 in the NIL and transfer portal era when it comes to recruiting at the level A&M just recruited at and the way they do recruit now. And that is, for better or for worse, you've got a chunk of kids in any given class who are not coming to your campus for the same reasons that kids did a generation ago. I am not foolish enough to tell you that transactions financially were never a part of this game until recently. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is if you were to take the Texas A&M roster of 1989, just pull a year out of thin air, there were a lot of East Texas kids on that roster who grew up knowing that granddad and dad and my brothers and my cousins, they all bleed maroon, and I'm going there and I would crawl over broken glass for that program. Point blank, that is not the motivation for a lot of these kids coming to your campus anymore. That doesn't mean you can't win with them. It just means that when you open them up and you see how they're wired, it's different. And as long as you're cool with that, go for it. But don't be surprised if you get some of those kids on campus and they don't immediately get what they wanted out of this transaction when you have some issues behind the scenes. That's inevitable. So that's just it. That's the new world you live in. Now, you can either choose to traffic in it heavily, you can choose to lightly traffic in it, or you can choose to watch some other folks dive headlong into the NIL game and you just kind of exist on the periphery. And I know that you guys think that every major program out there is doing this. They're not. And this is not an A&M statement at the moment. I'm going to get back to A&M in a second. But people are learning on the fly, and that does include Jimbo Fisher. A lot of folks are learning on the fly how to build a roster and manage a roster in the NIL era. Do I just treat it like Supermarket Sweep? Do I get my collective on board and do I just go knock as many products into my grocery cart as I can? Do I circle 4 or 5 names per cycle and say, those are the ones that we got to NIL as hard as we can for? Or do I say, nope, we're going to do it the way we always have. We'll let those other programs do that and we'll let them deal with the fallout and the ramifications that come with that. People are still working their way through that ideologically themselves. And Texas A&M is no different. But what happens and what will continue to happen is you're going to have some kids on campuses that they otherwise would not have been interested in because NIL drew them there. That's the new world we live in. Now, whether you agree with what I'm about to say or not, whether you're happy with what I'm about to say or not, is irrelevant because I'm not happy with what I'm about to say. But if you don't play them immediately, they will get pissed off. They don't love where they are. They're not emotionally attached to where they are in some cases. And they just assume hit the exit door if they're not immediately getting what they want. You're going to have that mixed in. If you traffic in this stuff heavily, it's inevitable. You're going to have that mixed into your signing classes. And when I talk to major programs, I think a lot of folks are looking at College Station right now and maybe altering their approach because of it. Now, I cannot prove to you that every bit of drama they have out there is NIL related. I know that's the assumption, but there's always more than meets the eye to a lot of this stuff. So if we were to really dive in, we could probably write a short novel on the inner workings of the A&M program this year. I think it would be foolish to say this has nothing to do with it, though. So that's where I am. And I can tell you confidently from speaking to some people in some other major programs, there are some big time programs that recruit at a high level that in some cases have just decided to pass on guys that are, sort of out there for the highest bidder, NIL related. I'm talking about legal stuff. What used to be illegal, but I'm talking about legal recruiting approaches now. But they're starting to understand, man, if we do acquire that kid via those means, what are we dealing with? What do we have to fulfill on our end? Can we really look at that kid and say, hey, you're going to have to come here and earn it just like everyone else? Should be able to. Can you, though? I don't know that you can. And for all the talk about Jimbo Fisher and whether, he's going to bite the bullet and hire an offensive coordinator this winter, there's another question. I think they're having to answer it internally right now. Do they continue headlong using the same recruiting approach that they did this last cycle? Or is he looking around at the results of this last cycle and saying, this isn't for me? Or does he feel like they're not connected? I don't know, because we don't have Jimbo Fisher on the record talking about that right now. But I'll tell you what I won't keep doing. Man, I got a Post-it stuck here. They are 3-4 right now. They've got a bunch of tough games left. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to look at a glass of spoiled milk, taste it, and realize it's spoiled, but then keep sipping it again every week. Like, that's what a lot of people do when things have gone off the rails for a team. Things are off the rails for A&M right now. That's the end of the story as it relates to the 2022 season for me. They're off the rails. That's it. I know it right now before Halloween. I'm not going to, if they lose 3 more games, keep reassessing where things are and incrementally upping my disdain for Jimbo Fisher or my unhappiness with how the program's running. No, this is it. I know what I need to know about this season, and then we'll rack them and try it again next year. In the meantime, obviously, there are a lot of things that have to happen, but that's pointless to me. Like, there'll be a lot of people who are only like 60% not sold on Jimbo, who will be 90% not sold on him if he loses 2 more games. And my question is, if it's off the rails, it's off the rails. Have you ever seen a derailment? It doesn't hop back up on the tracks again. It just sits over there on the side of the road until someone cleans it up. And you don't clean these derailments up mid-season, especially when your roster's beat to death. And not half, a lot of your team is going one way while another half's going another way. I will tell you this, though, and this part I do feel a little more confident speaking on. You may have some problem guys in that locker room at A&M, but I can promise you got some guys there for the right reasons, the reasons that you grew up believing in, for example, who are very, very proud to put on that jersey and put on that helmet. This Saturday is kind of about them because you got a game that you could win. You got a game against Ole Miss. They're coming in there. It's their second straight road game. You finally get to play at home. And while you may think it's a detracting factor that guys are being suspended, what you may not be taking into account is there could be some stalwarts on that team that despised what those guys stood for and maybe a little bit motivated by the fact that the head coach dropped the hammer. And you may see it play out on the field Saturday. And you may see an inspired performance because while talk radio and message boards may be a little more toxic, who knows? Maybe the locker room galvanizes a little bit. I actually think that's going to happen. I tend to believe Texas A&M is going to win outright Saturday. Now, I could be fantastically wrong about that, but I do happen to agree with that. But even if they don't win, it doesn't negate what I just said, the other 7 minutes or 8 minutes of this segment. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't leave yet. Don't leave yet. Make sure you like the video and please subscribe to the channel. Not just for me, that's how we keep this entire thing free.